rotated around this finger. Here's one uber advanced technique. I call this the galaxy. Just like before, you're going to have an extra chip here, but I want you to leave 2 chips and only bring up 1, leaving 2 chips at the pinky and ring finger. The other hand is going to do what you just learned, bring up 2. To do the full galaxy, reach across with your thumb, remove a chip, and with your pinky, remove a chip. And you have a full galaxy of chips. This is called a vertical chip roll. Once you learn the roll down, the vertical chip roll will be a little bit easier. This is how you do it. It's just like the roll down. You take 1 chip and you transfer it to your middle finger. Then your ring finger reaches up, removes, and last but not least, your pinky. And it's the same situation as in the roll down. Depending on how long your pinky is, in my case, my pinkies are a good 1.5 inches shorter than my ring finger. If your pinky's long enough, you can actually do exactly the same handling the whole way. My pinky comes a little short. If it was even a little bit longer, it's scraping on fingernail, which makes it nearly impossible too. So I cheat. I go like this, and at the end, I actually just roll the whole chip between these 2 fingers. But this is essentially the roll down. And then here, just depending on you, if you can do this, great. I can't. Go back up. So using the technique like in the roll down, this is called the vertical chip roll. You're rolling a single chip between all your fingers, just like that. This is called anti-gravity, and in magic it's called the muscle pass. The muscle pass is done by getting used to having chips in your hands like this and palming it. This is a technique used in magic, coin magic specifically. This is done by taking a chip, placing it on your middle finger, and pivoting it up into your palm. Now the meaty tissue here and over here, when your fingers squeeze together like this, form an area that can hold a coin or a poker chip. It doesn't take a lot of pressure at all. A lot of people squeeze really hard and you get this really distorted hand look. You're going to have that at the beginning. It's going to look a little bit like this, but after a while, they'll start to look really natural. So just practice by placing a chip here and squeezing and just holding it. Just find the spot in your hand that seems to hold it the best. And this tissue right here is what's going to come across and squeeze. About like that. You don't have to squeeze too hard. Now the way the pass, the muscle pass, or the anti-gravity move is created is by holding your hand like this for the palm, but squeezing really hard. So you hold it there lightly to hold the coin, but then if you squeeze too hard, the coin shoots across. So in magic, I shoot it across to have a coin go from one hand to another without being caught. But in the anti-gravity maneuver, it's the same thing. You're going to hold it here, and you're going to squeeze, and the coin goes up. Now that you learned the very basics of the anti-gravity, let me show you the finer points, plus a couple of cool variations. One subtle secret to the anti-gravity is when you're holding it like I showed you before, when the chip releases, it absolutely has to release off the top of the chip, here. Practice just getting it to pop over like so. Do not let it release from here. You'll never get the chip to go anywhere except onto the table. So release from the thumb, have it pop over, and little by little, get it to flip further and further and further. Now let's go into a couple cool variations with the anti-gravity. Instead of taking the chip and shooting up, take the chip and shoot it across into the other hand. You can actually go right into this little hole you create if you get the accuracy down to that degree. It's pretty cool to get a chip to fly to the other hand. and make it exactly into a hole that's the width of a chip. Another thing I like to do is take the chip and shoot it to the fingertips of the awaiting hand. And last, this one's pretty cool. When you have a big stack of chips in front of you, you can actually ricochet the chip from one hand off your stack right into the other hand. Depending on how big your stack is, just go for your highest stack. It's pretty cool. That's the anti-gravity. This is called the twirl. To do the chip trick, you're going to hold the chips like this to begin with, to pick them up. The pinky's not used in this effect at all. The ring finger is going to go almost directly across from your middle finger, and your thumb is going to meet the ring finger. So basically the spot between the thumb and the ring finger is dead center across from the middle finger. That's the position in holding the chips. Now the object here is to get this middle chip out. The thumb is going to just kind of stroke the center of the chips until you can dislodge this middle chip. This middle chip's going to come out. It's going to meet the first finger. The first finger is actually going to pivot this chip between these two fingers. And then it helps guide it back in. This is actually a fairly easy chip trick to do. The hardest part is originally just getting the fingers used to holding chips like this and then removing that center chip. This is called the chip twirl reversed. The twirl reversed is a little more challenging. This is how you do it. You're going to hold the chips exactly like you would in the twirl, but instead of the finger, the thumb here, sneaking out the center chip, you're actually going to try to grab the outside two. And this doesn't seem possible, but if you actually kind of dislodge this back one and then dislodge the front one, you'll get a knack of kind of doing that simultaneously and instantly. Meanwhile, the flesh of this middle finger is going to remove the bottom one. So you can almost think of it as one of two things: removing two to the top or removing the middle one down. Either way, you're going to remove this middle chip from the top two as before, but instead of going up, you're going to go down. From this down position, this chip is going to be rotated by the middle finger. And then it's going to be placed back up inside the top chips. So it's just like before, grabbing the middle chip to come up for the twirl. With the twirl reversed, you're actually just removing that chip down. Now let's learn a couple advanced variations on the twirl. What I want you to do is take 4 chips. You're going to remove the middle chips, just like before, as if it was one chip. It's really the same exact effect, except the balance right here is a little bit tricky because you have to rotate 2 chips. You'll notice that when you rotate them, they separate from here to here. That's okay. As long as you stop with 1 revolution and squeeze them right back up in there, they'll square themselves up and you're safe. So once again, drop out 2 and put them back up. That's the double twirl. Now you're going to learn a new technique called the twirl pinch. You're going to do the twirl just like before, but using 4 chips and only removing 1 of the 2 centered chips. It doesn't matter which chip you pull out, just pull out 1 and do the regular twirl. But instead of going back up inside after you pivot it around, pivot a little bit more, about another 90 degrees, and you'll notice that this chip is pinched between the first finger and middle finger. Release with the ring finger, and you'll notice that it's pinched. From this position, finagle this chip up and back so it rests on top of the other 3 chips. You do that by taking the middle finger and pushing up. Now once the chip is in this position, you have a lot of options. You can actually proceed from this position and do another twirl from underneath with that spare chip that's in there, or tilt this chip up and drop it onto the chips, or, my personal favorite, just toss it in the air and catch it. And now you're in position to do a variety of other tricks. This is called chip stack twirling. It's very easy to do. simply take 3 chips from above with your middle finger and thumb and rotate them 180 with your first finger. As the chips come around, drop the bottom chip. Rotate again, drop the bottom chip, rotate the last chip, and drop it. Or, if you'd like to make it tighter, bring the chips up just a little bit, about the half of a chip's distance. Rotate them, place them down, rotate, place down, rotate, place down. Another thing I like to do during gameplay is do the chip stack twirl in my hand while I'm looking around at other people's cards. You know, sometimes there's those tricks that are just for you to kind of keep your fingers busy. This isn't to impress anyone, that's for sure, but it kind of feels cool in the hand to just manipulate the chips. This is called front to back. The front to back, or the front to back flip, is one of the easiest chip tricks to do. Hold the chips in a position where your middle finger and thumb are containing all the chips. Your ring finger is going to attach itself to the bottom, and your index finger is going to come in for just some basic support. Your thumb will move forward and remove all the chips except for the front chip. The thumb's actually only going to pull back just a slight amount, about 1/3 to 1/2 of a chip's distance. That leaves this chip kind of floating in the front all by itself. The middle finger is actually just going to pull it flat against the edge of these chips and then to the back. I'll show you one more time from this angle. The thumb simply comes forward, pulls back all the chips except for the front chip. This one's sitting here all by itself. The ring finger grabs it and puts it to the back. The first finger at times can help guide it. An additional variation to the front to back flip is the thumb flip. You're going to hold the chips in a similar position, but instead of removing the back 3 chips and flipping the front one to the back, the thumb is going to come to the front, remove the front one, and flip it to the back. This is called the knuckle roll. In Magic, it's sometimes called the coin roll. There's not a lot to explain with the coin roll. It's more of a knack than anything else, but this is the basic handling. Place a chip on your thumb. You place it onto your first finger by driving it up the side of your finger. The idea is to get it to balance there. The next finger actually goes up and clips that chip. It's not a thing where it just kind of falls. You literally have the next finger consecutively grab the coin. When you flip it up to the first finger, it does overhang a bit. If you have very small hands, a poker chip might actually be too big for you. This next finger grabs it, flips it over. The next finger grabs it, flips it over. The next finger is prepared to receive it, and it does not flip over the pinky. You actually turn your hand down a little bit. This chip is then received underneath by the thumb, which slides it along all the fingers, back to the front again. Now when I do this with silver dollars, I go so fast that underneath, when I get to the pinky, I literally toss from here to here, and it goes all the way across in midair to here, and I catch it to get the speed up very, very fast. One other thing to note on this effect is right at the pinky, you don't go over the pinky. That's where a lot of people get confused. You don't continue going over. You just kind of let it pivot onto the edge of the pinky, which is bent a little bit to receive it, and then the thumb goes underneath and receives it. Once you get really, really fast at it, there's a point between the pinky and the thumb where they actually don't even touch. The chip's just kind of tossed. That's basically all there is to it. It's really a knack that you need to develop, but this is one of the coolest things you could do at a poker table. There's a couple advanced techniques I would like to show you with the coin roll, or the knuckle roll. I showed you before how to go forwards. Now I want to give you the basic understanding of how to go backwards. what I would recommend is actually starting going forward on the top of the hand. Instead of going underneath at the end with your pinky, stop at the pinky and then turn your hand back the other way and go backwards. The same thing as before. Each finger is going to retrieve and grab the chip. So you can go part way and back, all the way down and back. And then when you go around, going backwards from the very beginning is very difficult. From the thumb, getting to the pinky is the challenging spot. You can do the same thing you did before. You're going to slide the chip underneath. You're going to literally stick it up through between the back two fingers to start the process. That's actually the spot that's going to give you most trouble. But actually, once you get it down, it's really fun to have both hands simultaneously be able to go forwards and backwards. And as an additional bonus, once you get good with one hand, I recommend starting with the other hand too, which is very fun. And lastly,